Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going back in time to revisit a classic episode of Seinfeld.
Oh, nice.
You know that iconic 90s sitcom that was famously dubbed as a show about nothing?
Yeah, right.
But as you know, it's so much more than that, right? Underneath the surface humor, Seinfeld often brilliantly dissects those often unspoken rules of social dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
The episode we're unpacking today, The Paste and Text. It's a hilarious example.
Okay.
It tackles that whole minefield of male friendships and the often awkward,
Yeah.
unspoken rules around breaking up with a friend.
Right.
I can't wait to see what nuggets of social wisdom we can kind of extract from this comedic gem.
Oh, I think you'll find this episode surprisingly insightful.
Okay.
It takes those everyday social scenarios, the ones we've all stumbled through,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of magnifies them to a comedic extreme, almost like it's holding a funhouse mirror up to our own lives.
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's jump right in. One of the most memorable scenes from this episode has to be the floss incident. We find George Costanza, Jerry's perpetually neurotic friend,
Yes.
recounting a disastrous date where a rogue piece of green dental floss
Oh, right.
becomes his scapegoat for the evening's romantic failings.
Oh, yeah. What's fascinating here is how this scene plays on our anxieties about social judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Like a tiny mishap, something most people wouldn't even notice,
Right.
becomes, in George's mind, the sole reason for his romantic rejection.
Yeah.
It's this brilliant exaggeration of that universal feeling we all have at times,
Right.
that we're under a microscope and any tiny flaw will be magnified and held against us.
It's so true. He's convinced this errant floss is the reason he confessed his feelings prematurely.
Right.
It's so absurdly funny, but also relatable. We've all been there, maybe not with floss,
Yeah.
but that moment where a minor, embarrassing incident completely throws us off our game.
Exactly. And that's where the brilliance of Seinfeld lies.
Okay.
It taps into these shared human experiences, these awkward moments that we usually try to sweep under the rug, turns them into something hilarious and strangely comforting.
Yeah.
It's like the show is saying, see, you're not alone in feeling this way.
Exactly. Now, this episode goes beyond awkward dates and really delves into the often murky waters of male friendships.
Okay.
With Jerry's central dilemma, how to gracefully extract himself from this friendship with Joel Horneck.
Right.
Joel is this childhood acquaintance who's turned into a bit of a stage 5 clinger,
Oh, yeah.
constantly monopolizing Jerry's time.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The episode shines a light on the lack of a clear social script for ending a friendship, especially between men.
Right.
We have all these established norms and expectations around breaking up with a romantic partner.
Mm-hmm.
But with friendships, particularly those formed in childhood or adolescence,
Yeah.
there's this unspoken obligation, this sense of loyalty that can be hard to navigate.
It's so true. The show plays with this idea by having Jerry contemplate applying those romantic breakup tropes to his situation with Joel, which of course leads to even more awkwardness and hilarity.
Yeah.
Then we have Elaine, Jerry's ever-sarcastic ex-girlfriend and friend,
Mm-hmm.
offering up this series of hilariously outlandish excuses Jerry could use to dodge Joel.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, I'm Dan.
She's like, just pretend to be someone else.
Right.
Elaine's role here is key.
I think so too.
Okay.
Her dry wit and those absurd suggestions really highlight the lengths Jerry's willing to go to avoid a direct confrontation.
Yeah.
But there's also this subtle commentary on societal expectations at play.
Mm-hmm.
Men, especially, are often discouraged from expressing vulnerability or having those difficult emotional conversations.
Right.
Which can make navigating these situations even more challenging.
Absolutely. And speaking of avoiding effort, Jerry's attempts to dodge Joel reach peak irony.
Okay.
When he gives Joel his ticket to a Knicks game, thinking he's cleverly escaping an evening of unwanted socializing,
Yeah.
only to find out, much to his dismay, that Kramer, his eccentric neighbor,
Has befriended Joel and attended the game with him.
the universe just loves to keep those two connected.
I know. It's like, come on.
Doesn't it?
So Jerry, in his infinite wisdom, decides to create an excuse Rolodex
Oh, yeah.
filled with fabricated reasons to avoid future outings with Joel.
Yeah.
It's a move that even Elaine calls out as incredibly immature.
Right.
But isn't there a bit of all of us in that?
Think so.
We've all probably resorted to little white lies or elaborate excuses to get out of social obligations we'd rather avoid.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry's elaborate scheme highlights how far we're willing to go to circumvent uncomfortable situations,
Yeah.
especially when those situations involve confronting a friend about a relationship that's no longer working.
Right.
It's a reminder that sometimes those unspoken social rules can feel more like a prison than a guide.
It's like he's trapped by this idea of what a friendship should be, even though it's clearly not bringing him any joy. But before we dive deeper into the dynamics of this friendship trap and Jerry's escalating avoidance tactics,
Okay.
let's shift our focus to another key character whose story intertwines with this central theme. Kramer.
Oh,
Kramer, as always, injects a dose of his unique brand of chaos into the mix.
yeah.
He bursts onto the scene with his latest entrepreneurial scheme, a make-your-own-pizza restaurant.
Oh, right.
It's such a classic Kramer idea, completely impractical, destined to fail spectacularly.
Yeah.
But what makes it so funny and relatable is that we all know someone who comes up with these brilliant ideas
Uh-huh.
that just, we kind of shake our heads and chuckle.
And Jerry's reaction to Kramer's pizza venture is so perfectly Jerry. He can't fathom why anyone would want to go through the hassle of making their own pizza
Right.
when they could just, order one.
Yeah.
Already perfectly assembled and ready to devour.
Exactly. It speaks to his character's aversion to effort and his unwavering preference for convenience.
It does. And it's funny because Elaine, usually the voice of reason,
Right.
actually gets on board with Kramer's ridiculous pizza plan.
She does. I think this speaks to the show's ability to tap into our shared sense of absurdity.
Mm-hmm.
We all have those moments where, despite knowing better, we get swept up in someone else's enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah.
Even if that enthusiasm is directed at something completely impractical.
Right.
It's like that part of us that wants to believe in the impossible, even if it's just for a fleeting moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while Jerry's busy dodging Joel and contemplating the merits of pre-made pizza, George's parallel storyline offers an interesting counterpoint to the main theme of the episode.
Okay.
While Jerry struggles to extricate himself from an unwanted friendship, George is grappling with the aftermath of a romantic breakup.
Right.
And as you might expect, he's handling it with his signature brand of neurotic overthinking.
Of course, George's subplot serves as a reminder that relationships, in all their forms, can be messy and complicated.
Yes, they are.
He's fixated on the fact that his ex-girlfriend made him pay for lunch after she dumped him.
Oh, no.
It's such a petty grievance, but for George, it's this symbol of his perceived failure
Right.
and his deep-seated insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
He's obsessed with this idea of fairness, even in the face of a romantic rejection.
He is. He even shows up at the bank with this enormous jug of pennies,
Oh my gosh, I know.
determined to cash them in, because it's his money,
Right.
even though it's this ridiculously inconvenient and time-consuming task.
It's like he's trying to exert some control over a situation that's already spun out of his grasp.
And that ties into the broader theme of social awkwardness that runs throughout the episode.
Okay.
Whether it's Jerry's elaborate lies and avoidance tactics, or George's penny-counting obsession,
Right.
these characters are constantly searching for ways to navigate a world that feels chaotic and unpredictable. They're trying to impose some sense of order on their lives, even if their methods are often misguided and ultimately self-defeating.
It's so true. But let's not forget about the running gag of the Knicks game tickets.
Oh, right.
It's almost like the universe is conspiring to keep Jerry and Joel tethered together,
Yeah.
despite Jerry's best efforts to break free.
Uh-huh.
He gives George's ticket to Joel as a peace offering after their failed breakup attempt,
Okay.
then tries to take it back,
Right.
then offers both tickets, only to discover that Kramer has already whisked Joel away to the game.
Wow.
It's this masterful use of situational irony that Seinfeld does so well.
The Knicks game becomes this symbolic representation of Jerry's desire to escape Joel's orbit.
Right.
Each time he thinks he's free, fate, in the form of Kramer, intervenes and throws them back together.
Yeah.
It highlights the often unpredictable nature of relationships.
Yeah.
Then the futility of trying to orchestrate them too carefully.
It's like the harder he tries to push Joel away, the more their paths seem to converge.
Exact.
And through it all, we have Elaine trying to offer Jerry sage advice, while simultaneously poking fun at his increasingly desperate attempts to shake Joel loose.
Yeah,
She's that friend we all need.
I agree.
The one who can call us out on our nonsense while still offering a supportive shoulder to cry on.
Elaine serves as a sort of audience surrogate, offering a voice of reason amidst the chaos.
Okay.
She's the one who points out the absurdity of Jerry's actions,
Right.
reminding him and us,
Yeah.
that sometimes the most direct approach is the best, even if it's a little uncomfortable.
But even Elaine, the pragmatist, gets
Yeah.
caught up in Kramer's wacky schemes.
He does.
Her initial skepticism about the make-your-own-pizza idea quickly morphs into genuine enthusiasm. It's like that part of us that wants to believe in the impossible, even for a fleeting moment.
It is. And that's the magic of Seinfeld, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a show that, at its core, is about the inherent awkwardness and unpredictability of human interaction.
Okay.
We see ourselves reflected in these characters, and their neuroses, their petty grievances, and their often hilarious attempts to navigate the minefield of social expectations.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're all just stumbling through this thing called life, doing the best we can with the often limited social scripts we've been given.
And as we head into the final act of this episode, we see Jerry's attempts to break free from Joel's clutches reach a fever pitch.
Oh, boy.
His carefully constructed excuse Rolodex lies in ruins.
Uh-oh.
And he's left facing the uncomfortable reality that some friendships, like stubborn stains, just refuse to fade away gracefully.
Oh, no.
So we're in the final act now, and this whole Joel situation, it kind of comes to a head.
Right.
Picture this. Jerry's at Monk's trying to enjoy a meal.
Okay.
When Joel swoops in,
Oh, no.
unannounced as usual,
Yeah.
proceeds to bombard Jerry with a laundry list of future Knicks game invitations.
Wow.
It's like he's laying out his entire social calendar for the season,
Jeez.
fully expecting Jerry to be his +1 for every single game.
This scene is where the episode takes on a more nuanced layer.
Okay.
It goes beyond just showcasing Jerry's annoyance with Joel's clinginess, and it becomes a commentary on those friendships that linger out of a sense of obligation
Yeah.
rather than genuine enjoyment.
Right.
You know, the ones we feel pressured to maintain because of shared history or social expectations, even when they no longer bring us joy or fulfillment.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of being trapped by the very idea of friendship.
Right.
Joel, completely oblivious to Jerry's discomfort, just keeps piling on those invitations.
Yeah.
Certain that they're the best of buddies.
Yeah.
It's both hilarious and a little bit heartbreaking because deep down, I think we've probably all encountered a Joel in our own lives at some point.
I think that's the brilliance of this episode, its ability to resonate on such a universal level.
Right.
It shines a light on those social dynamics we often find ourselves caught in.
Yeah.
Those situations where we feel pressure to conform to certain expectations, even when those expectations don't align with our true feelings.
Right. It forces us to ask ourselves, how many of our relationships are truly chosen? And how many are maintained out of a sense of duty or inertia?
It's true.
Right. It really makes you think about those friendships you might be holding on to out of obligation, those relationships that maybe don't spark joy anymore,
Right.
but you feel guilty about letting go of. It's a tricky social dilemma, and the episode doesn't offer any easy answers.
No, it does.
Which honestly is what makes it so powerful.
Exactly. Seinfeld, even at its most comedic, often manages to subtly reflect these complex social realities back at us.
Yeah.
It doesn't preach or offer solutions. It simply presents the scenario. With all its awkwardness and humor,
Right.
allows us to draw our own conclusions.
And that's what makes it such a rewarding experience for viewers, even decades later.
Right.
You know, it's a show that continues to spark conversations and make us think about the often unspoken rules that govern our social interactions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the pasted text, we're left with a lingering question. Have you ever had a Joel in your life?
Ooh.
Someone you felt obligated to maintain a friendship with, even though the relationship wasn't truly fulfilling or reciprocal.
Yeah.
It's something to ponder as you navigate the often hilarious, sometimes frustrating,
Right.
but always fascinating world of human connections.
So true.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
So it seems like Jerry is stuck, right? Like, how do you actually break up with a friend?
Well, this is where the episode really gets us thinking, right? It's
Yeah.
funny, but it's also kind of uncomfortable because we recognize those moments in our own lives.
Yeah, totally. Like, have you ever had to end a friendship?
Oh, I think most of us have, right? These things happen. Sometimes people just grow apart.
Right, right. But how do you actually do it? Like, what's the right way to say, hey, I don't really want to hang out anymore?
Well, the show doesn't give us any easy answers, does it?
Yeah.
It's like Jerry tries everything to avoid that direct confrontation.
Yeah, he does. Like that whole excuse Rolodex thing.
Right. It's so ridiculous, but also, I don't know, kind of relatable.
It is. But ultimately it backfires, doesn't it?
It does. It's like the more he tries to avoid Joel, the more their paths seem to collide.
Yeah, and by the end, he's basically resigned to the fact that he's stuck with this friendship he doesn't really want.
I think that's a really interesting point. It's like the episode is suggesting that sometimes, even though we might think we have control over our relationships, there are these forces, these social expectations, or maybe even just inertia that keep us tethered to people we'd rather not be connected to.
Hmm, that's a really good point. And it's kind of a downer ending, isn't it? Like, Jerry doesn't really win in the end.
No, he doesn't. But I think that's part of what makes Seinfeld so brilliant. It doesn't always tie things up neatly with a happy ending. It often reflects those messy, unresolved aspects of life that we all grapple with.
I think you're right. It's a show that embraces the awkwardness and absurdity of human interaction. And it reminds us that sometimes there are no easy solutions, no clear-cut answers.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the pasted text, it's worth reflecting on the friendships in our own lives. The ones that bring us joy, the ones that challenge us, and maybe even the ones that we're holding on to out of habit or obligation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another exploration of the human condition, as seen through the lens of classic sitcoms.